She's just a doormat, my cheating husband laughed. She won't do a thing, they agreed. I stayed silent. I just smiled and signed the papers. 5 days later he regretted it. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. She's just a doormat, the message read. I blinked, staring at the glowing screen of the iPad in my lap. Outside, the Minneapolis wind was howling, battering against the windows with that specific cruelty that only a Midwest winter can muster. Inside, the fireplace was crackling, and my 5-year-old daughter, Hallie, was sound asleep upstairs, safe and warm. It was supposed to be a peaceful Tuesday night. I was supposed to be setting up parental controls on her tablet, making sure she couldn't accidentally buy $100 worth of virtual coins for her pony game. But life has a funny way of ripping the rug out from under you when you're most comfortable. The message bubble was blue. It was from a contact saved as the Queen Bee, my mother-in-law, Bernice. But the sender of the reply, the one that made my breath hitch in my throat, was from Trent's iPhone. My husband. She won't check, Mom. She trusts me. Besides, Mallory is too desperate to keep this family happy. She's a doormat. She'll believe the roof repair story. My stomach dropped. It felt like I was on an elevator that had suddenly snapped its cables, plummeting down into a dark, cold basement. I sat there, frozen, the heat from the fire suddenly feeling oppressive, suffocating. My husband, Trent, was downstairs in the kitchen, making himself a sandwich. I could hear the clink of a knife against a plate, the hum of the refrigerator. Normal sounds. The sounds of a happy marriage. Or so I thought. You see, Trent and I shared an iCloud account. It was something we set up years ago and never really managed. He must have linked his messages to Hallie's iPad earlier that day when he was fixing the screen brightness for her, and he'd forgotten to unlink it. I shouldn't have looked. I should have closed the app. I was raised to be polite, to respect privacy, to be the good girl who doesn't rock the boat. But something in my gut, a primal, feminine instinct that I had suppressed for a decade, screamed at me. Read it, Mallory. Read it all. My trembling finger hovered over the group chat. It was titled The Royal Family. Just seeing the name made bile rise in my throat. It included Trent, his mother Bernice, and his sister, Candace. I tapped it. And my world ended. I scrolled up, my eyes devouring the text with a morbid hunger. Bernice, did the transfer go through? We need to secure that down payment for the condo in Florida before the end of the month. Trent, relax. Her bonus hits tomorrow. As soon as it lands in the joint account, I'm moving $15,000 to TNC Holdings. I told her the contractor needs cash up front for the roof materials. Candace, LOL. She actually believed the roof needs $15,000? The roof is fine. God, she is so pathetic. I almost feel bad. Almost. Trent, don't feel bad. She's lucky she has us. Without me, she'd just be a lonely, overworked pharmacist with too many cats. I'm doing her a favor by staying. Bernice, exactly. Just make sure you get the money moved before she checks the balance. And don't forget, Candace needs that tuition money for her course. Candace, it's a certification, Mom. And yes, Trent, don't be stingy. Mallory won't notice a few extra thousand missing. Just tell her prices went up due to inflation or something. She swallows every lie you feed her. Trent, I know. She's just a doormat. She won't dare leave. Even if she caught me, she'd probably apologize for snooping. I've got her trained. I put a hand over my mouth to stifle a sob that was threatening to tear its way out of my chest. Tears blurred my vision, hot and stinging. Trained. He talked about me like I was a dog. Like I was an obedient golden retriever he could kick and then expect to come back wagging its tail. I looked around my living room. I paid for this sofa. I paid for the 60-inch TV Trent watched football on every Sunday. I paid for the hardwood floors he walked on. Trent hadn't held a steady job in 4 years. He called himself a real estate consultant, which was fancy talk for unemployed and picky. I covered the mortgage, the groceries, the car payments, Hallie's preschool, everything. And this was how they talked about me? I felt a wave of nausea so strong I thought I might be sick right there on the rug. But then, another message popped up, appearing in real time. Trent, just a little longer. Once I secure the assets and we get that account in the Caymans fully funded, we can start the next phase. She's getting too old and boring anyway. I deserve better. Bernice, that's my boy. Smart. Secure the future, then take out the trash. Take out the trash. I wasn't his wife. I wasn't the mother of his child. I was an extraction point. A resource to be mined until it was dry, and then discarded. Suddenly, I heard the heavy footsteps on the stairs. Thump. 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 Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. If he walked in here and saw me reading this, saw the tears on my face, he would know. And if he knew I knew, what would he do? He had already admitted to stealing from me. He was planning to leave me. If I confronted him now, without a plan, without protection, I would lose everything. He would gaslight me, manipulate me, or worse, he might empty the accounts tonight before I could stop him. The doorknob turned. Mallory? Babe? You okay up there? His voice was smooth, concerned. The same voice that had whispered I love you this morning. It made my skin crawl. I quickly double-tapped the home button and swiped the message app away, locking the iPad just as the door creaked open. I turned my face away, wiping my eyes frantically with the sleeve of my sweater, pretending to adjust a throw pillow. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Every instinct in my body wanted to scream, to throw the iPad at his head, to claw his eyes out. I wanted to roar. But I didn't. I froze. The doormat in me was paralyzed. But deep down, beneath the fear and the shock, something else was waking up. A tiny, cold spark of rage. Mallory? He stepped into the room, holding a plate of cookies. I brought you a snack. Thought you might be hungry. He smiled. It was a handsome smile. The smile I fell in love with. The smile of a monster. I took a deep breath, forcing my lungs to expand against the crushing weight in my chest. I turned to face him, burying the scream deep in my throat. I'm fine, I said, my voice sounding strange and hollow to my own ears. Just a headache. A sudden migraine. Trent's face shifted into a mask of practiced sympathy. He set the cookies down on the side table and walked over, placing a hand on my shoulder. I flinched. I couldn't help it. It was like being touched by a hot iron. You're working too hard, babe, he crooned, his fingers squeezing my shoulder. You need to relax. Why don't you let me handle the finances this month? You shouldn't be stressing over bills with a headache like that. The audacity was breathtaking. He was literally touching me, comforting me, while actively plotting to rob me blind. It took every ounce of willpower I possessed not to recoil and spit in his face. Maybe you're right, I whispered, lying through my teeth. I think I just need a hot bath. Go ahead, he said, kissing the top of my head. I'll clean up downstairs. I walked into the master bathroom and locked the door. I turned on the shower, blasting the water as hot as it would go, letting the steam fill the room. Then, I sank onto the cold tile floor, clutching my phone to my chest. I didn't get in the water. I needed to think. I needed to see the damage. My hands were shaking so badly I mistyped my passcode twice. Finally, I got into my banking app. I have always been the breadwinner, but I let Trent manage the accounts because he said it made him feel useful, feel like the man of the house. I was so afraid of emasculating him, so afraid of him leaving, that I handed over the keys to the kingdom. I scrolled through the transaction history. Home Depot, $450. Home Depot, $800. Okay, that looked like roof repairs. But then I tapped on the check images for the larger withdrawals. Checks written to TNC Holdings. $2,500. $4,000. $1,200. I quickly opened a browser tab and searched for TNC Holdings Minnesota. Nothing. No website. No business registration that showed up on a basic search. Then I searched the Secretary of State's business filing database. There it was. TNC Holdings LLC. Registered agent, Bernice Miller. Members, Trent Miller, Candace Miller. It wasn't a contractor. It wasn't a roofing company. It was them. T for Trent, C for Candace. They had created a shell company to funnel my salary straight into their pockets. I checked the credit card statements. The joint card I rarely used. The Ritz-Carlton Spa, $600. Nordstrom, $1,500. DraftKings, $500. DraftKings, $500. DraftKings, $2,000. He wasn't just stealing, he was gambling. And buying designer clothes. Candace. It had to be Candace. I remembered last week when she showed up with a new Gucci bag, claiming it was a knockoff she got in Chinatown. It wasn't a knockoff. I bought that bag. I worked 60-hour weeks at the pharmacy, standing on my feet until my veins throbbed, dealing with insurance companies and angry customers, just so she could carry a purse worth more than my first car. I felt a physical pain in my chest, a sharp, stabbing ache of betrayal. It wasn't just the money. Money comes and goes. It was the laughter. The LOL in the text messages. They were laughing at me. They thought I was stupid. They thought I was weak. I looked at the bathroom counter. There was a shoebox on the top shelf where Trent kept his shoe shining kit. He never shined his shoes. I stood up, my legs wobbly, and reached for the box. Inside, wrapped in a soft velvet cloth, was not shoe polish. It was a watch. A Rolex Submariner. I know watches, my father collected them before he left us. This watch was easily worth $10,000 or $12,000. The contractor needs cash up front for materials, he had told me last week, looking me in the eye with those puppy dog eyes I loved so much. Roofing shingles are expensive right now, Mallory. Supply chain issues. I had transferred $10,000 to the joint account for him. He bought a watch. I stared at the gleaming metal, the sapphire crystal face reflecting the bathroom lights. This was my hard work. This was Hallie's college fund. This was our security. And it was sitting in a shoebox, waiting for the day he would leave me and check the time on his new life. A sob finally broke loose, a harsh, ugly sound. I slapped a hand over my mouth, biting down on my knuckles until I tasted copper. I looked at myself in the mirror above the sink. My eyes were red and puffy. My hair was messy. I looked tired. I looked like exactly what they said I was. A doormat. No, I whispered to the reflection. I thought about Hallie sleeping upstairs. I thought about Bernice calling her trash in the text messages. The sadness began to curdle. The grief began to harden. It was cooling, solidifying into something heavy and sharp. I washed my face with freezing cold water. I scrubbed the tears away until my skin was raw. Then I put the watch back exactly how I found it. I turned off the shower. When I unlocked the bathroom door and stepped out, Trent was sitting on the bed, scrolling on his phone. Probably texting them. probably laughing. "Feel better?" he asked, not looking up. "Much better," I said. My voice was steady. Cold. The hot water really woke me up. I climbed into bed beside the man who was planning to destroy me. I turned off the lamp. In the darkness, I didn't sleep. I lay there, listening to his breathing, and for the first time in 10 years, I didn't feel love. I felt like a hunter sitting in a blind, waiting for the buck to step into the clearing. As I lay there in the dark, the red numbers of the alarm clock staring back at me, my mind drifted back. How did I get here? How did a woman who graduated top of her class in pharmacy school, a woman who manages a team of 20 people and a multi-million-dollar inventory, become a doormat? It started with my mother. My father left when I was 7. He didn't just leave, he evaporated. One day he was there, the next day his closet was empty. My mother, bless her heart, didn't get angry. She got quiet. She spent the next 15 years teaching me the art of being small. "Don't cause trouble, Mallory," she would say when I wanted to speak up about a bad grade or a rude neighbor. A woman's strength is in her silence. We keep the peace. If you make a man angry, he leaves. If you make him happy, you're safe. I internalized that. I drank it like milk. I thought love was a transaction. I give you everything, I suppress my needs, and in exchange, you don't abandon me. Then I met Trent. I was 26, fresh out of grad school, drowning in student loans and loneliness. He was 28, charming, a visionary. He didn't have a steady job then, either. He was a musician waiting for his big break. But God, he knew how to make me feel seen. He love-bombed me. That's the term I know now, but back then, it just felt like a fairy tale. Flowers sent to the pharmacy. Poems left on my windshield. He told me I was the most beautiful, intelligent creature he'd ever met. He told me he wanted to take care of me, even though I was the one paying for our dinner dates because he forgot his wallet. I ignored the red flags. They weren't just red flags, they were giant neon billboards screaming danger. I remember the first time I met his family. It was 6 months into dating. Bernice looked me up and down like I was a piece of discounted meat at the deli counter. "You're a pharmacist?" she sniffed, holding a glass of Chardonnay I had brought as a gift. "So, you count pills?" Trent is an artist. He needs someone who understands the soul, not just chemistry. "I make a good living," I had said softly, trying to impress her. "Money is vulgar," she replied. "Irony is a bitter pill." Now, 10 years later, money was the only thing she cared about. Then there was the wedding. Oh God, the wedding. I paid for almost all of it. Trent's family claimed they were temporarily illiquid due to some investment restructuring. I wanted a small garden ceremony. Bernice insisted on a ballroom. Trent sided with her. "It's my mom, babe. It's her only son getting married. Let's just make her happy." So I wrote the checks. I worked extra shifts. I kept the peace. On the wedding day, Bernice showed up in a champagne-colored dress that was so pale it was effectively white. It was lace. It was floor-length. She looked like the bride. Guests whispered. My maid of honor wanted to spill red wine on her. No, I had stopped her. "Don't cause a scene. It's fine. I don't want to ruin Trent's day." Trent's day. Not mine. Never mine. And then, the ring incident. 3 years into our marriage, my diamond engagement ring, a modest stone, but one I cherished, went missing from my nightstand. I tore the house apart. I cried for days. Trent held me, stroked my hair, and said, "It's okay, honey. Maybe you dropped it down the drain. You're always so clumsy when you're tired." He made me believe I lost it. He made me feel guilty for being careless. I ended up buying myself a replacement ring, a cubic zirconia, because I felt too ashamed to spend money on a real one after losing the first. 2 years later, I saw a photo on Facebook. One of Candace's friends had tagged her at a party. Candace was holding a martini glass, and on her pinky finger was a ring. My ring. The setting was unmistakable. I showed Trent. "Don't be crazy, Mallory," he snapped, his face darkening. "That's just costume jewelry. You're being paranoid. Are you accusing my sister of being a thief? After everything my family has done for you?" He turned it around on me. He made me apologize for accusing his sister of stealing the ring he had likely given her. I apologized to keep the peace. I apologized so he wouldn't yell. I apologized so he wouldn't leave. Lying in bed now, the memory of that apology tasted like ash in my mouth. I had handed them pieces of myself, slice by slice, until there was nothing left but a checkbook and a beating heart they wanted to stop. I looked at Trent's sleeping profile. His mouth was slightly open. He looked peaceful. He was dreaming of caimans and condos and a life without the doormat. The sadness in my chest finally evaporated, replaced entirely by a cold, sharp clarity. My mother was wrong. Silence doesn't keep you safe. Silence just makes it easier for the wolves to eat you without waking the neighbors. I wasn't going to be silent anymore. But I wasn't going to be loud either. Not yet. I was going to be exactly what they thought I was, until it was too late. I rolled over and closed my eyes. I needed sleep. Tomorrow, I had to go to work. And after work, I had to go to war. The next morning, I was an Academy Award-winning actress. I made Trent coffee. I kissed his cheek. I even asked, "Did you sleep well, honey?" with a smile that didn't reach my eyes, but he never looked at my eyes anyway. "Great," he mumbled, checking his phone. "Hey, did that bonus hit? I need to head to the supplier for the roof stuff by noon. It should be there by 10 a.m., I chirped. I'll transfer it to checking as soon as I get a break. I left the house, dropped Hallie off at preschool, and watched her run inside. "Be good, baby girl," I whispered. "Mommy is going to fix everything." I didn't go to the pharmacy. I called in sick, something I hadn't done in 5 years. Instead, I drove to a nondescript office building in downtown Minneapolis. Tanya was waiting for me in the lobby. Tanya has been my best friend since college. She's the opposite of me, loud, brash, and takes zero prisoners. She works as a senior paralegal for one of the nastiest divorce firms in the city. When I told her everything over the phone that morning, she didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She just said, "Get your ass down here. Bring the iPad." We sat in a conference room with her boss, Mr. Henderson. He was a man who looked like a bulldog in a three-piece suit. He listened to my story, looked at the screenshots I had taken, and emailed to a secret Gmail account Tanya helped me set up, and then he leaned back. "Okay, Mallory," Henderson grunted. "Here's the reality. Minnesota is an equitable distribution state. Usually, that means 50-50. But what you have here..." He tapped the printout of the text messages. "This is financial dissipation. Fraud. Intent to conceal assets. This changes the game." "I just want a divorce," I said, my hands twisting in my lap. "I want him out." "No," Tanya slammed her hand on the table, startling me. "You don't just want him out. You want justice. If you file now, he'll hide the money he's already stolen. He'll claim he's broke. He'll stick you with alimony because you're the high earner." "Alimony?" I choked. "I have to pay him?" "If he plays the stay-at-home dad card, yes," Henderson nodded grimly. "Unless we prove he's a criminal. We need to document everything. We need a forensic accounting of that TNC holdings. We need to prove where every cent went. So what do I do? You go back, Henderson said. You play the happy wife. You let him think he's winning. You give us access to all the accounts. And you wait until we have the trap snapped shut. Document everything, Tanya added, sliding a small USB drive across the table. This has a keylogger and a tracker. Plug it into the back of the desktop computer he uses at home. It's undetectable. And the money? I asked. He wants the $15,000 bonus today. Give it to him, Henderson said ruthlessly. It hurts, I know. But that transfer is the bait. Once he moves it to his shell company, we have a fresh, traceable felony. It's the nail in his coffin. I drove home feeling sick, but also strangely empowered. I had a mission. When I got home, Trent wasn't there. His car was gone. I ran to the home office. This was my chance. I crawled under the desk, my heart hammering, fumbling to find the USB port on the back of the dusty tower PC. My fingers found the slot. I pushed the tiny drive in. The front door slammed open. Mallory? You home? Trent's voice boomed from the hallway. I froze. I was on my hands and knees under the desk. In here. I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. I grabbed a microfiber cloth from the drawer and started frantically wiping the baseboards. Trent walked in, looking suspicious. I thought you were at work. I saw your car. I came home early, I said, backing out from under the desk, holding up the dusty cloth. My migraine came back. I figured since I was here, I'd finally clean behind this desk. It's disgusting back there, Trent. Dust bunnies the size of cats. He looked at me, then at the cloth. His shoulders relaxed. Oh. You're cleaning. Typical Mallory. He chuckled, a condescending sound. Well, don't strain yourself. Did you do the transfer? Just did it on my phone, I lied. It should be in the joint account now. Awesome, he grinned, pulling out his phone. I'll get the materials ordered. You're the best, babe. He walked out, whistling. I slumped against the desk, sweating. He bought it. Because why wouldn't he? To him, I was just the doormat who cleaned the baseboards while he stole my life savings. Just wait, I whispered to his retreating back. Just you wait. The next 2 days were an exercise in torture. I watched the $15,000 leave our account. I watched the notification pop up on Trent's phone. I watched him text Bernice, package secured. Then, the leeches arrived. Candace came over on Thursday. She didn't knock, she just breezed in using the spare key I had begged Trent to take back a dozen times. Ugh, it smells like bleach in here, she wrinkled her nose, throwing her coat onto my clean sofa. Mallory, you really need to hire a maid. It's embarrassing that you do your own cleaning. I like taking care of my home, I said, tight-lipped, chopping vegetables for dinner. Whatever, she rolled her eyes. She wandered into the living room, picking up knickknacks and putting them down with disdain. So, Trent says you guys are finally fixing that hideous roof. About time. Maybe you should update the siding too. This color is so 2010. She was wearing a brand new pair of Louboutin boots. Red bottoms. Easily $1,200. Paid for by TNC Holdings, no doubt. Paid for by my bonus. Nice boots, Candace, I said, testing the waters. New job? She stiffened slightly. Gift. From a admirer. You wouldn't understand, Mallory. Romance isn't really your thing. You're more practical. She wandered toward the bathroom. I'm gonna borrow some concealer. Mine ran out. She didn't ask. She stated. I watched her go, knowing she would take the expensive La Mer cream I had saved up for months to buy. I let her. Let them take it all. It's just more evidence. Later that evening, while Trent was at the gym, checking the tracker Tanya gave me, I saw he was actually at a steakhouse downtown. My phone rang. Unknown number. Usually, I don't answer those. But something told me to pick up. Hello? Is this Mallory? A rasping, older female voice. Yes. Who is this? This is Joyce. Bernice's sister. I paused. I had heard of Aunt Joyce. She was the black sheep of the family. Bernice called her crazy and jealous. I hadn't seen her since the wedding, 10 years ago. Oh. Hello, Joyce. Listen to me closely, the woman said. Her voice was urgent, shaky. I heard through the grapevine, my cousin talks too much, that Trent is suddenly flush with cash. Buying watches. Playing big shot. I don't know what you mean, I stammered, cautious. Don't play dumb, girl. I know my sister. And I know her spawn. If they have money, they stole it. Bernice did the same thing to our father. My grip tightened on the phone. What? When Dad died, Bernice produced a revised will 3 days later. Left everything to her. Cut me out completely. She forged his signature, Mallory. She's an artist with a pen. I couldn't prove it back then, but I know she did it. The room seemed to spin. Why are you telling me this? Because you have a daughter, Joyce said, her voice softening. And because I saw you at the wedding. You looked like a nice girl walking into a nest of vipers. Check your paperwork, Mallory. Check anything requiring a signature. Bernice teaches her kids her tricks. The line went dead. Check the paperwork. My mind raced. What paperwork? The house? The cars? Everything was in both our names. Then I remembered. My inheritance. My mother had passed away 3 years ago. She left me her small, paid-off house in St. Paul. It was my safety net. My nest egg for Hallie. I kept it as a rental property. It was solely in my name. Trent had always pestered me to sell it and invest the money in his businesses, but I had held firm. It was the one time I said no. But Joyce's words echoed in my ears. She's an artist with a pen. I ran to the filing cabinet where I kept the deed to my mom's house. The folder was there. The deed looked normal. But then I logged onto the Hennepin County Property Records website. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely type the address. Search. There it was. Lienholder, Rapid Cash Mortgages LLC. Amount, $200,000. Date, 3 months ago. A second mortgage. On a house that was supposed to be paid off. A house that was only in my name. Someone had signed my name. Someone had stolen $200,000 of equity from my daughter's future. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, staring at the computer screen until the pixels burned into my retinas. $200,000. It wasn't just theft, it was annihilation. That was Hallie's college tuition. That was my retirement. Gone. The next morning, Friday, I called in sick again. Trent didn't even notice. He was too busy whistling, getting dressed in his best suit. Big meeting today, babe, he said, checking his reflection in the mirror. Potential investor for a commercial zoning project. Might be late. Okay, I said, staring at my coffee cup. Good luck. As soon as he left, I drove straight to the county recorder's office. I needed to see the physical documents. I needed to see the signature. The clerk was a kind, middle-aged woman who looked at me with pity when she saw my pale face. You want to pull the mortgage deed filed in November? Yes, please. She handed me the file. I flipped it open. There, at the bottom of the page, was my name. Mallory Jenkins Miller. The signature was good. It was very good. It had the same loop on the M that I use. But the Y at the end, it was too flourished. Too dramatic. It was Bernice's handwriting style, trying to mimic mine. There's a copy of the ID used for the notary here too, the clerk said. I turned the page. My driver's license. But something was off. The photo. It was me, but it wasn't. The hair was slightly different. The chin was angled down. I looked closer. It wasn't me. It was Candace. Wearing a wig. Wearing my glasses. I felt the bile rise in my throat. They had stolen my ID. Candace had dressed up as me. They had gone to a shady notary, probably one of Bernice's friends, and signed my life away. Is there a problem, ma'am? The clerk asked. This isn't me, I whispered. This is fraud. This is a crime. You'll need to file a police report, the clerk said, her face hardening. And you'll need a lawyer. I have one, I said. Can I get certified copies? Of everything? Absolutely. I walked out of that building holding a manila envelope that felt heavier than lead. It contained the proof that my husband and his family weren't just leeches, they were felons. I sat in my car in the parking lot and called Tanya. They mortgaged my mom's house, I said, my voice flat. They took $200K. Candace posed as me. Tanya swore loudly on the other end. Okay, Mel. This is it. This is the nuclear bomb. We have them. But we need to know where the money went. $200K doesn't just disappear. I think I know, I said. I remembered the text message about securing the future and the crypto apps I'd seen on Trent's phone notifications, the ones he quickly swiped away. I need to get into his phone, I said. Physically. Can you do that? He changes his passcode every week. But I saw him type it in yesterday. I think I know it. Be careful, Mallory. If they desperation drove them to commit mortgage fraud, they are dangerous. Don't let them know you know. Not yet. I won't, I promised. I drove home, my mind working like a machine. I wasn't the doormat anymore. I was the exterminator. When I got home, the house was empty. I went to the tracking software Tanya had installed on the desktop. I pulled up the keystroke logs for the last 3 months. I searched for banking URLs. Crypto exchanges. And there it was. Binance. Coinbase. And a sketchy offshore site called Bitforex Cayman. I matched the dates. 3 days after the mortgage fraud was signed, a transfer of $195,000 went into the offshore crypto account. And then, the kicker. The value history. Trent had bought a speculative meme coin. Something Bernice probably told him was the next Bitcoin. I looked at the current balance. The coin had crashed last month. The $200,000 was now worth $4,200. I started laughing. A hysterical, wild laugh that echoed in the empty house. They stole my inheritance. They committed a felony. And they set the money on fire. They were evil, yes. But worse, they were stupid. They were broke. That's why they needed my $15,000 bonus so badly. They were trying to cover the interest payments on the stolen mortgage so I wouldn't find out. The front door opened. I slammed the laptop shut and spun around. It wasn't Trent. It was a courier. Delivery for Mallory Miller? That's me. He handed me a large envelope. Sign here. I signed. The envelope was from a private investigation firm. Tanya had hired them to tail Trent for the last 48 hours, just to see where he was spending his time. I opened the envelope in the kitchen. Photos. Glossy, high-resolution photos. Trent at a restaurant. Trent holding hands across the table. Trent kissing a woman outside a hotel. I looked at the woman. I knew her. Elena. My jaw dropped. Elena was a manager at a rival pharmacy chain. She was the one who always seemed to know our pricing strategies before we launched them. She was the reason I lost a promotion last year. She had poached a major supplier contract from under my nose. Trent wasn't just cheating on me sexually. He was sleeping with my corporate rival. He was feeding her my confidential work information. He was selling me out. In every conceivable way. I stared at the photo of Trent's hand resting on Elena's knee. The ring on his finger, the one I paid for, glinted in the sunlight. The rage that had been a cold spark was now a raging inferno. It consumed the last shreds of my hesitation. He was sleeping with the enemy. Literally. I realized now why my work laptop had been moved sometimes in the mornings. Why Trent asked so many innocent questions about my upcoming projects, about the vendor bids I was working on. So, babe, what's the big deal with this new insulin supplier? He would ask over dinner. Is it really going to undercut the market? And I, the trusting, stupid doormat, would tell him. Yes, if we sign them next week, we'll drop prices by 15%. It's a game changer. And then, 2 days later, Elena's company would announce a price drop of 16%. I had been blaming myself. I thought I was careless. I thought I was bad at my job. But the leak was in my bed. I grabbed my phone and called Tanya. He's with Elena, I said. Elena from PharmaMax. You're kidding, Tanya gasped. The shark? The shark. He's feeding her my trade secrets. That's corporate espionage, Tanya. That's not just divorce court, that's civil lawsuits. That's getting him blacklisted from every industry forever. Mallory, listen to me. This is gold. This is leverage like I've never seen. But you have to hold it. We need to drop all the hammers at once. I know, I said. But I want to hurt him. I want to hurt him now. Patience, Tanya soothed. How about we hurt Elena too? How? Elena is married, right? To that guy, the VP of operations? Robert. Yes. He's a terrifying man. Very powerful. Perfect, Tanya said, her voice dripping with malicious delight. I think Robert would be very interested in these photos. But not yet. We invite everyone to the party. The party? You're going to throw a party, Mallory. A celebration dinner. Next Tuesday. Tell Trent you're getting another inheritance. A bigger one. From a great-aunt you never mentioned. He'll believe it? Greed makes people blind. Mal, tell him you want to discuss consolidating the family assets. Tell him you want to put him in charge of the trust. Invite Bernice. Invite Candace. Tell them to dress up. I smiled. It was a terrifying smile. I caught my reflection in the microwave door and barely recognized myself. Okay, I said. I'll set the table. I hung up. Trent came home an hour later. He smelled like expensive perfume, Elena's perfume. Dior poison. Hey babe, he breezed in, loosening his tie. Long day. Meetings dragged on. I bet, I said, not looking up from my book. Did you close the deal? He smirked. Almost. I think I've got the client eating out of the palm of my hand. That's great, Trent. Really great. I stood up and walked over to him. I placed my hands on his chest. I could feel his heart beating. A liar's heart. I have some news too, I said, making my eyes go wide and naive. I got a letter today. From the executor of Great-Aunt Mildred's estate. I don't have a Great-Aunt Mildred. Trent frowned. Who? She lived in Connecticut. Old money. I haven't seen her since I was a baby. Apparently, she left me everything. Stocks. Bonds. It's substantial, Trent. 7 figures. Trent's eyes actually dilated. I watched the pupils expand, swallowing the iris. The smell of greed overpowered the smell of perfume. 7 figures, he choked out. Like, $1 million? More, I whispered. But I don't know how to handle it. It's so much paperwork. The taxes. I'm overwhelmed. He grabbed my hands. Babe. Don't worry. I'm here. I can handle it. This is what I do. TNC Holdings, we can funnel it through there to minimize the tax exposure. Really? I asked. You'd do that for me? Of course, he said, pulling me into a hug. We're partners. We're a team. This is our ticket, Mallory. We're finally going to have the life we deserve. Over his shoulder, I stared at the wall. Yes, I thought. I'm definitely going to give you the life you deserve. The weekend was a blur of calculated deception. While Trent was busy mentally spending my imaginary fortune, buying champagne we couldn't afford and calling Bernice to whisper excitedly in the garage, I was dismantling his life brick by brick. First, I went to the bank, a different branch than the one we used. I opened a new account solely in my name. I couldn't move the joint funds yet without tipping him off, but I changed the direct deposit for my paycheck effective immediately. Next, I froze Hallie's credit. Thank God I did. When I pulled her report, I saw a soft inquiry from a credit card company just last week. Bernice. She was trying to open a card in my 5-year-old daughter's name. The level of depravity was bottomless. Then, I went shopping. I went to the fanciest boutique in the Mall of America. Usually, I wear beige, gray, navy. Sensible colors. Doormat colors. I bought a dress. It was blood red. Fitted. Structural. It looked like armor made of silk. It cost $800. I put it on my personal credit card, the one Trent didn't know about. When I looked in the dressing room mirror, the woman staring back wasn't Mallory the pharmacist. She was Mallory the executioner. On Monday, I took a long lunch break. I drove to the headquarters of PharmaMax, Elena's company. I didn't go inside. I waited in the parking garage until I saw a reserved spot for Robert Vance, VP of Operations. I didn't approach him. That was too risky. Instead, I taped a manila envelope to the windshield of his Porsche. Inside wasn't the photos, not yet. It was a single sheet of paper. Your wife is leaking company data to a competitor. She is also sleeping with the competitor's husband. If you want proof, come to dinner at the Capitol Grill, private room B, tomorrow at 7 p.m. Don't be late. I drove away, my hand steady on the wheel. Tuesday arrived. The day of the dinner. The atmosphere in the house was electric. Trent was almost manic. He had spent the morning researching offshore tax havens. So, is the lawyer bringing the paperwork to the dinner? Trent asked, fixing his tie in the mirror. He had shaved, gelled his hair. He looked like $1 million. $1 million of debt. Yes, I lied. Mr. Henderson is bringing the transfer documents. All I have to do is sign, and you become the trustee. Perfect, Trent grinned. He turned to me. You look different today, Mel. I was wearing the red dress. My hair was blown out, sleek and sharp. My lips were painted a dark crimson. I feel different, I said. I feel awake. Right, Trent said, distracted. Let's go. Mom and Candace are meeting us there. Mom is so excited to celebrate with you. I bet she is, I said. We got into the car. The drive to downtown Minneapolis was quiet. Trent hummed along to the radio. I watched the city lights flicker past, counting the seconds. When we arrived at the Capitol Grill, Bernice and Candace were already there, sitting in the private dining room I had reserved. They were drinking my wine. Mallory! Bernice stood up, her arms wide. She was wearing a sequin top that looked ridiculous on her. Darling! Look at you! Red! So bold! She hugged me. It felt like being hugged by a constrictor snake. Hi, Bernice, I said, stepping out of her embrace. And look at this place, Candace said, looking around. Finally, some class. I assume we're ordering the Wagyu? Order whatever you want, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. Tonight is a night to remember. Trent sat to my right. Bernice to my left. Candace opposite me. They looked at me with hungry, shining eyes. They saw a checkbook. They saw a fool. I looked at my watch. 6:55 p.m. 5 minutes until the curtain rose. So, Bernice leaned in, her voice hushed. Trent tells us about the inheritance. Mildred. Such a sweet woman. I always liked her. I almost laughed. Bernice had never met Mildred because Mildred didn't exist. Yes, I said. It's a lot of money, Bernice. Life-changing money. And you're doing the right thing, she said, patting my hand. Letting Trent handle it. Men have a head for these things. You're a mother, you need to focus on nurturing. Actually, I said, picking up my menu. I've been doing a lot of thinking about nurturing lately. Nurturing snakes. The table went quiet. Excuse me? Bernice blinked. Snakes, I said, smiling brightly. They require a lot of warmth, don't they? And mice. They eat mice. Mallory, you're being weird, Candace said, reaching for a breadstick. Is the lawyer coming or what? I'm starving. Oh, he's coming, I said. And a few other guests. There was a knock at the heavy oak door. Trent perked up. That must be Henderson. The door opened. It wasn't Mr. Henderson. It was Robert Vance. Elena's husband. And behind him, looking terrified, was Elena herself. Trent's face went from excitement to confusion to sheer, unadulterated horror in the span of 3 seconds. Hello, I said, standing up. I believe you all know each other? Or at least, intimately. The trap was sprung. And I was just getting started. The silence in the private dining room of the Capitol Grill was heavy, a physical weight that pressed against my eardrums. It was the kind of silence that precedes a natural disaster, the moment the ocean pulls back from the shore before the tsunami hits. Trent was frozen halfway out of his chair. His face, usually so composed and practiced in its deceit, had crumbled into a mask of sheer terror. His eyes darted frantically from me, sitting calmly at the head of the table, to the imposing figure of Robert Vance standing in the doorway, and finally to the weeping woman behind him, Elena. Elena looked like a ghost of the woman who had terrorized my professional life. Her usually sleek hair was pulled back in a messy bun, her face scrubbed clean of makeup, revealing blotchy, red skin. She wasn't wearing her power suit. She was wearing a baggy trench coat, clutching the lapels tight around her neck as if she were freezing to death. "Robert?" Trent finally choked out. His voice was a thin, high-pitched squeak that sounded pathetic in the luxe, mahogany-paneled room. "Mr. Vance? We weren't expecting you. Is this about the insulin contract? Because I can explain the data discrepancies." Bernice, sitting to my left, was the only one who hadn't grasped the gravity of the situation. Her narcissism acted like a shield, blinding her to any reality where her son wasn't the golden boy. She actually picked up her wineglass, swirling the expensive Cabernet I had paid for. "Oh, more business associates." Bernice chimed in, her voice shrill and welcoming. "Trent is always working, aren't you, honey? Such a networker. Mallory, tell the waiter to bring 2 more chairs. Though we really should be discussing the inheritance first. Family matters, you know." "We aren't here to eat," Robert Vance said. His voice was a low rumble, terrifyingly calm, vibrating with the kind of controlled rage that only powerful men possess. He stepped further into the room, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "And we certainly aren't here to discuss contracts. We're here because your wife invited us, Miller." Trent whipped his head toward me, his neck snapping around so fast I heard a crack. "Mallory? What is going on? Why is he here?" I didn't answer him immediately. I picked up my wineglass, admiring the way the light caught the deep red liquid. It looked like blood. I took a slow, deliberate sip, letting the tannins coat my tongue. "Sit down, Trent," I said softly. "You look sweaty. It's unbecoming for a man about to manage a 7-figure trust." "I don't understand," Candace muttered, looking annoyed as she reached for a breadstick. "Who are these people? Can we just order the appetizers? I have a nail appointment at 9. "Shut up, Candace," Trent hissed, not taking his eyes off Robert. He turned back to the VP, his hands raising in a gesture of surrender. "Look, Robert, if this is about the pricing data, it was just theoretical. Hypothetical market research. We were just brainstorming." "Hypothetical?" Robert let out a sharp, bark-like laugh that lacked any humor. He reached into the inner pocket of his charcoal suit jacket and pulled out a thick stack of photographs. He didn't hand them over politely. He tossed them onto the pristine white tablecloth with a flick of his wrist. They fanned out like a deck of poisonous cards, sliding across the table until they stopped right in front of Bernice's salad plate. The photos were high resolution. Brutal in their clarity. Trent kissing Elena outside a Motel 6. Trent handing Elena a folder marked Confidential Pricing Strategy. Trent and Elena arguing in a parked car, his hand gripping her arm aggressively. And a screenshot of a text message, "The doormat is clueless. Just waiting for her bonus to hit so I can buy you that bracelet." Bernice gasped. She reached for one of the photos, her manicured fingers trembling. She brought it closer to her face, squinting. "What is this? Trent? Who is this woman? Why are you at a motel?" "That's Elena," I said, my voice cutting through the tension like a scalpel. "She's a regional manager at PharmaMax. My direct competitor. She's also Trent's mistress. And his accomplice in corporate espionage." "Accomplice?" Bernice dropped the photo as if it were coated in acid. "My son is a real estate consultant. He doesn't need to steal. He has his own business." "He steals when he's broke, Mother," I said, finally looking at her. "And TNC Holdings isn't a business. It's a piggy bank you help him raid." Elena finally spoke. Her voice was thin, reedy, barely a whisper. "Trent, you said she knew. You said you had an open marriage. You told me she didn't care what you did as long as you paid the bills. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It started as a low chuckle in my chest and bubbled up into a genuine, full-bodied laugh. It was the absurdity of it all. Paid the bills? I asked, wiping a tear of mirth from my eye. Elena, honey, Trent hasn't paid a bill since 2019. I bought the shirt he's wearing. I bought the boxers underneath it. I bought the gas in the car he drove to meet you. He paid for that motel room with a credit card linked to my salary. Trent's face turned a violent shade of purple. Shut up, Mallory. You don't know what you're talking about. Robert, listen, she's crazy. She's been under a lot of stress lately. She's hallucinating. I'm the victim here. Robert ignored him completely. He turned his gaze to me. Mrs. Miller. Thank you for the envelope on my windshield. The recordings you included, they were enlightening. He turned back to Trent. Elena has been terminated for cause, effective immediately. We are pressing charges for theft of trade secrets. And since you were the recipient of that stolen property, Mr. Miller, our legal team filed a civil suit against you this afternoon. We are seeking damages in the amount of $4 million. $4 million? Trent squeaked, his legs giving out. He collapsed back into his chair. And a criminal referral has been sent to the FBI, Robert added. Interstate commerce violations. I hope that inheritance your wife mentioned is real, son. You're going to need a hell of a defense attorney. Trent looked at me, betrayal written all over his face. The irony was delicious. He felt betrayed because I had stopped letting him betray me. You set me up, Trent whispered, the realization finally dawning on him. The inheritance, the dinner, the trust fund, it was all a lie? Not all of it, I said, leaning forward, resting my elbows on the table and lacing my fingers together. I said we were going to discuss the family assets. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Robert looked at Elena, his face hard as stone. Go wait in the car. Robert, please, Elena sobbed, reaching for his hand. Go. She fled the room, sobbing into her trench coat. Robert looked at me one last time, nodded respectfully, and walked out. The heavy door clicked shut, leaving us alone. The air in the room was thick enough to choke on. Candace was staring at the photos on the table, her mouth slightly open. Bernice was gripping her napkin so hard her knuckles were white. Trent was slumped in his chair, looking like a puppet whose strings had been cut. Well, I said brightly, picking up the menu. Now that the appetizers are out of the way, who's ready for the main course? I hear the lobster bisque is to die for. For a long, agonizing moment, nobody moved. It was as if Robert Vance had sucked all the oxygen out of the room when he left. The only sound was the soft jazz playing over the restaurant speakers, a cruel contrast to the carnage unfolding at table 6. Then, Bernice exploded. How dare you, she screeched, slamming her hand on the table, making the silverware jump. Wine sloshed over the rim of her glass, staining the white tablecloth like a fresh wound. You vindictive little witch. You humiliated him. In front of a vice president. Do you know what you've done to his reputation? I stared at her, genuinely fascinated by her delusion. His reputation? I asked calmly. Bernice, his reputation is unemployed cheater. I think I actually improved it by adding defendant to the list. At least that sounds active. You ruined everything. Trent shouted, finding his voice again. He stood up, knocking his chair back against the wall with a loud bang. I had a plan. I was going to use that connection to get a job. A real job. I was networking. By sleeping with his wife and stealing my data? I shot back, my voice rising just enough to be heard clearly over his shouting. That's not networking, Trent. That's a felony. And you're not mad that I ruined your career. You're mad that I cut off your supply. I loved you, he yelled, trying to pivot to the emotional manipulation that had worked for a decade. He ran a hand through his gelled hair, messing it up. I made a mistake, okay? Elena, she pursued me. She threw herself at me. I was weak. But I did it for us, Mallory. I wanted to bring money in. I wanted to be the provider you always wanted. Oh, stop it, I said, disgusted. I saw the texts, Trent. I saw the group chat. He froze. His mouth hung open. What group chat? The royal family, I said. I saw what you wrote on Tuesday night. About the doormat. About how I wouldn't dare leave. About how you were going to take the trash out once you secured the assets. Candace gasped. She looked at her phone lying on the table, then at me, realizing I had seen her messages too. Her face paled under the layers of bronzer. She instinctively covered her phone with her hand, as if that could hide the digital trail of her cruelty. You snooped? Bernice hissed, narrowing her eyes into slits. You violated his privacy? That is a federal crime, Mallory. I can have you arrested for accessing his private communications. Actually, no, I said, leaning back. He left his iCloud logged in on our 5-year-old daughter's iPad. It popped up right next to My Little Pony. Hallie almost learned to read by seeing her father call her mother a pathetic cow and her grandmother calling her baggage. Trent paced the small room like a caged animal. Okay, look. We said some mean things. We were venting. Families fight. Families talk trash. It doesn't mean anything. You can't throw away 10 years of marriage over some texts and one mistake with Elena. One mistake? I raised an eyebrow. Trent, you've been funneling money into TNC Holdings for 3 years. You think I didn't find the LLC registration? You think I didn't see the gambling debts? The designer clothes for Candace? I looked at Candace. She shrank back in her chair, pulling her expensive coat tighter around herself. I didn't know he was taking it from you, Candace lied, her voice trembling. He said he won big on sports betting. He said he was a crypto genius. Liar, I said. I saw the text where you asked for tuition money for your course. You knew exactly where it was coming from. You joked about me picking up extra shifts so you could buy Louboutins. Mallory, please, Trent stepped toward me, hands out, palms up. The nice guy mask was back on, but it was slipping, revealing the desperate grifter underneath. Let's just go home. Let's talk about this in private. We can fix this. I'll cut off Elena. I'll close the LLC. We can go to counseling. Just don't do anything rash. Think about Hallie. I am thinking about Hallie, I said. That's why I'm here. And that's why Mr. Henderson is here. I gestured to the door. As if on cue, Mr. Henderson walked in. He wasn't bringing a check for an inheritance. He was carrying a stack of legal documents that looked heavy enough to crush a man. Mr. Miller, Henderson rumbled, placing the stack on the table with a heavy thud. Mrs. Miller. Ms. Miller. Who is this? Bernice demanded. Is this the executor? I am Mallory's divorce attorney, Henderson said. And I am currently serving your son with divorce papers, citing adultery, financial dissipation, and fraud. You can't prove fraud, Trent sneered, trying to regain some bravado. It's a joint account. Marital assets. I can spend it how I want. In a normal divorce? Maybe, Henderson smiled, a shark-like grin that showed too many teeth. But Mrs. Miller has been very diligent. She documented every transaction. Every lie. and most importantly, the mortgage. The color drained from Trent's face so completely he looked like a corpse. The mortgage?" he whispered. "The one on my mother's house," I said. "The one you forged my signature on. The one Candace impersonated me for." Bernice stood up so fast her chair tipped over. "That's a lie. You signed that. You agreed to help the family." "I have the notary records, Bernice," I said calmly. "I have the video from the bank security camera showing Candace in a cheap wig. And I have the crypto wallet address where you sent the money." You found the crypto?" Trent's voice was barely audible. "I found it," I said. "And I saw what happened to it." Bernice turned on her son. "You told me the crypto was safe. You told me it doubled. It crashed, Mom." Trent screamed, cracking under the pressure. "It crashed weeks ago. It's gone. It's all gone." The silence returned, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was hollow. The sound of a fortune evaporating. Trent looked at me with a mixture of terror and desperate hope, clinging to a reality that no longer existed. You saw the crypto? Then you know it's an investment. It's down right now, sure, but it's going to bounce back. Bernice said the market is just correcting. If we just hold, Mallory, if we just put a little more into average down. It's a rug pull scam, Trent, I said, feeling a strange, detached sense of pity for his stupidity. The coin doesn't exist anymore. The developers took the money and vanished to Dubai. You didn't invest $200,000. You flushed it down the toilet. No. Bernice whispered, clutching her chest, her face turning gray. No, that's impossible. My advisor promised, he promised 300% returns, he said it was the next Bitcoin. Your advisor is a bot on Telegram, Bernice, I said. I traced the IP address. It's a server farm in Russia. The reality of the money being gone, truly gone, hit them harder than the divorce, harder than the affair. Money was their god, and their god was dead. I reached for the large manila envelope I had placed under my chair. Now, I said, standing up. I smoothed the fabric of my red dress. It felt like battle armor. I brought you all something. Since there is no inheritance, and since you've spent all of mine, I thought I'd give you a parting gift. I handed a folder to Trent. One to Bernice. One to Candace. Open them, I commanded. They opened the folders with trembling hands. Inside weren't checks. They were thick, bound reports from the forensic accountant and the private investigator. Page 1, a timeline of Trent's affair, dating back 6 months. Page 5, a spreadsheet of every dollar stolen via TNC Holdings. Page 10, the foreclosure notice for Bernice's house, which she had secretly leveraged to cover Trent's earlier debts, something my PI found. Page 15, a printout of the Doormat text thread, blown up to poster size. I want you to look at that last page, I said. Trent looked down. He saw his own words, she's just a doormat. She won't dare leave. You called me a doormat, I said, my voice rising, vibrating with the power I had suppressed for 10 years. You thought because I was kind, I was weak. You thought because I was quiet, I was stupid. You thought because I loved you, I would let you walk all over me. I walked around the table, the heels of my shoes clicking rhythmically on the hardwood floor. I stopped behind Trent. I leaned down and whispered in his ear. But here's the thing about doormats, Trent. You wipe your dirty boots on them. You leave your mud and your filth on them. But the doormat? It stays right where it is. It sees everyone who comes in and everyone who goes out. It knows exactly how dirty you really are. I straightened up and looked at the camera, or rather, looked at the invisible audience of my life. My heart was pounding, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I knew this was the moment. The turning point. If you are still listening to this, if you are sitting there feeling my rage and my victory, please, help me. Like this video and comment the number 1 below. Let me know that I am not alone. Let me know that you are standing right here with me in this dining room, watching these thieves get what they deserve. Your support is the fuel that keeps me standing. Comment number 1 so I can see you. And now, let me tell you what happened when the police arrived. I took a deep breath, feeling the collective energy of every woman who had ever been silenced, every wife who had ever been cheated on. You're right, Trent, I said, looking down at him. I was a doormat. But do you know what you do with a doormat when it gets too full of dirt? Trent looked up, tears streaming down his face. Mallory, don't, please, we're family. You shake it out, I said. And today is cleaning day. Bernice slammed her folder shut. I won't listen to this. I am leaving. Come on, Candace. We are going. Trent, deal with your crazy wife. Sit down, mother. Trent shouted, turning on her. You got me into this. You told me to mortgage the house. You told me the crypto was safe. I did no such thing. Bernice screeched. You are a grown man. Don't you dare blame me for your incompetence. Incompetence? Trent stood up, knocking his chair over again. I wanted to get a job at Home Depot. You told me it was beneath me. You told me to start the LLC. You introduced me to the notary who faked the signature. Oh my God, Candace whimpered, scrolling through her phone. My friends are texting me. Mallory posted the pictures? Mallory, did you post the pictures? I didn't post them, I said. But I think Robert Vance might have shared them with a few people. Or maybe it was the private investigator. Information wants to be free, Candace. You bitch. Candace lunged across the table, her acrylic nails aiming for my face. Mr. Henderson stepped in, blocking her with his briefcase. I wouldn't do that, Ms. Miller. Assault would just add to the list of charges. Charges? Candace froze. What charges? I nodded to Mr. Henderson. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Send them in. The heavy oak doors swung open. The sounds of the restaurant, clinking glasses, laughter, life, drifted in for a second before being silenced by the arrival of 2 uniformed officers and a detective in a rumpled suit. Trent looked at the door. He looked at me. And then, in a moment of pure cowardice that I will never forget, he pointed at his mother. It was her. Trent screamed at the police. She made me do it. She has the money. She's the mastermind. You traitorous little snake. Bernice lunged at her son, slapping him across the face. It was chaos. It was ugly. And it was absolutely beautiful. The private dining room had turned into a crime scene, or perhaps a circus. Trent Miller, the detective asked, his voice weary, like he had seen 1,000 family dramas but none quite this expensive. Trent scrambled backward, tripping over his fallen chair. No! Wait! This is a civil matter. My wife, she's hysterical. We're just arguing about money. This isn't police business. We're not here for a domestic dispute, son, the detective said, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. The metal glinted under the chandelier. We're here for identity theft, bank fraud, wire fraud, and forgery in the first degree. We have the warrant signed by a judge an hour ago. That's absurd. Bernice shrieked. She tried to stand up to block the detective, channeling some delusional matriarch energy, puffing out her chest like a threatened bird. Do you know who we are? We are the Millers. We are upstanding citizens. I am on the board of the Homeowners Association. Ma'am, sit down or you'll be joining him for obstruction, the detective barked, not even looking at her. Bernice collapsed back into her chair, her mouth opening and closing like a goldfish gasping for air. The officer grabbed Trent's wrist. Click. The sound of the handcuffs ratcheting shut was the sweetest music I had ever heard. It was better than any symphony. Candace Miller? The second officer asked. Candace dropped her fork. It clattered loudly on the china plate. Me? I didn't do anything. I just wore a wig. Mom told me to. Trent told me to. I didn't sign anything, I just stood there. You impersonated Mallory Miller to facilitate a fraudulent loan, the officer said, pulling her arms behind her back. That's a felony, miss. You have the right to remain silent, though I suggest you start using it. It was Mom. Candace screamed, tears running down her face, ruining her spray tan, leaving streaks of orange on her cheeks. She planned it. She said Mallory was holding out on us. She said the house should be ours anyway because Mallory didn't deserve it. Don't arrest me, arrest her. The betrayal was immediate and total. As soon as the heat was applied, the royal family turned on each other like rats in a bucket. There was no loyalty. There was no love. There was only survival. Shut up, you stupid girl! Bernice yelled, her voice cracking. I never told you to do anything. You're lying to save your own skin. I have always been a good mother. I stood there, sipping my wine, watching the implosion. Mr. Henderson leaned over to me. The DA is very interested in the mother, he whispered. But they need Trent or Candace to flip on her to get the charges to stick for the mastermind role. Judging by this display, I'd say Bernice is going down. They'll be singing arias to the prosecutor by morning. Trent was crying now. Ugly, heaving sobs that shook his shoulders. Mallory, please. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them I can pay it back. I'll get a job. I'll work 3 jobs. I'll mow lawns. You can't pay back $200,000 working at McDonald's, Trent, I said coldly. And you can't pay back 10 years of my life. But Hallie, he pleaded, using his final card. Think of Hallie. She needs her father. Do you want her to see me in jail? Do you want her to grow up knowing her dad is a criminal? The mention of my daughter made my blood run cold. The rage that had been simmering boiled over. Hallie? I walked up to him, getting right in his face. I could smell the fear on him. Hallie is the reason you are going to jail, Trent. You stole her college fund. You stole her security. And I heard you on the video, the one from the hidden camera in your office. His eyes widened. I heard you tell your mother that Hallie was baggage and that you'd sign over custody to me in exchange for the house. You are going to sell your daughter for real estate, Trent. You are going to trade her for a condo in Florida. The room went silent. Even the police officers looked at him with disgust. The detective tightened his grip on Trent's arm. Get him out of here, I said. They dragged him out. He was weeping, his shoes dragging on the carpet, the expensive Italian loafers he bought with my money. Candace was led out behind him, wailing about her boots getting scuffed and demanding to call her Instagram followers. Bernice was left sitting alone at the table. The queen bee without her drones. The police hadn't arrested her yet, they needed the testimony first. You think you've won, Bernice whispered, her venom undiluted even in defeat. She adjusted her sequin top, trying to regain some dignity. But you'll never be happy. You're cold, Mallory. You're a cold, heartless bitch. You destroyed this family. I'd rather be a cold bitch with a paid-off house and a clean conscience, I said, than a thief in a sequin top. I picked up the check the waiter had timidly left on the side table. I looked at the total. $800 for wine and appetizers they barely touched. Oh, Bernice, I said, dropping the check in front of her. I canceled the joint cards this morning. And Trent's wallet is in evidence. I smiled. You're paying. I hope you brought cash. I turned on my heel and walked out, Mr. Henderson right beside me. I didn't look back. I walked out into the cool Minneapolis night, took a deep breath of fresh air, and realized for the first time in forever I could breathe. But I knew this wasn't the end. Bernice was still free. And a wounded snake is the most dangerous kind. The next 48 hours were a blur of logistics and locks. The first thing I did was change the locks on the house. I hired a locksmith to come at 7 a.m. the next morning. While he worked, I packed. Not my things. Theirs. I went through the house like a tornado. Trent's clothes, his gadgets, his ridiculous collection of sneakers, it all went into heavy-duty contractor bags. I didn't fold anything. I didn't check pockets. I just shoved 10 years of deception into black plastic. I dragged the bags to the curb. It was a mountain of trash. When the garbage truck came, I tipped the driver $50 to take it all. He looked at the pile, then at me, and gave me a thumbs up. Spring cleaning? He asked. Exorcism, I replied. By noon, the house felt lighter. The air felt cleaner. But the silence was broken by a pounding on the door. It wasn't Bernice. It was a stranger. A woman in a navy blue suit holding a clipboard. My stomach dropped. I opened the door, leaving the chain lock on. Mallory Miller? Yes. I'm Sarah Jenkins from Child Protective Services. We received a report regarding the welfare of your daughter, Hallie. My world stopped. What? What report? We received a call claiming that the mother is abusing alcohol and has been leaving the child unattended for long periods of time. The caller also stated there were unsanitary conditions and dangerous weapons in the home. Bernice. It had to be Bernice. That's a lie, I said, my voice shaking. My mother-in-law, she's angry. My husband was arrested yesterday. This is retaliation. I understand, Mrs. Miller. But I still need to come in and inspect the home and speak with the child. I let her in. I had nothing to hide, but the violation felt physical. I watched as she inspected my fridge, checked Hallie's bed, looked under the sinks. Hallie was at preschool, thank God. The house is spotless, Sarah noted, checking a box. And I see no alcohol bottles other than a wine rack. I'm a pharmacist, I said. I am the most responsible person you will ever meet. The caller was very specific, Sarah said, lowering her voice. She said you were unstable and paranoid. The caller is currently under investigation for fraud, I said, handing Sarah Mr. Henderson's card. Please, call my lawyer. He can explain the context. Sarah nodded. I'm sorry you're going through this. It looks like a false report. I'll close the file, but I have to document the visit. As she left, I looked out the window. Parked down the street was Bernice's old sedan. I saw her silhouette in the driver's seat. She was watching. She had called CPS not because she cared about Hallie, but because she wanted to hurt me. She wanted to take the one thing I loved more than anything. The rage I felt then was different from the rage at the restaurant. That was hot, fiery. This was cold, calculated. I called Mr. Henderson. She called CPS. She tried to take Hallie. That's it, Henderson said. That's the nail in her coffin. We're filing for a restraining order immediately. And Mallory? The DA just called. Trent flipped. He gave them everything. The logs, the emails, the recordings of Bernice telling him how to forge your signature. Is she arrested? Not yet. They're building the RICO case. They want to get her for the whole operation, not just your mortgage. Apparently, she's done this to 3 other family members over the years. That night, I sat in Hallie's room while she slept. I listened to her breathe. I realized that the battle wasn't over. Bernice was free, and she was desperate. I installed a new security system that night. Cameras on every corner of the house. Motion sensors. 2 days later, the cameras caught something. It was 2 a.m. A figure in a hoodie walked up to my front porch. They poured something on my flower bed, the petunias I had planted with Hallie. Then they threw a brick through the front window. The alarm screamed. The figure ran. I grabbed Hallie and hid in the bathroom, calling 911. When the police arrived, they found the brick. Wrapped around it was a note, "You will pay for what you did to my family." And the liquid on the flowers? It was bleach. They reviewed the camera footage. The figure was too spry to be Bernice. But the car waiting at the end of the block? It was Bernice's sedan. The figure was Candace. Out on bail. They just violated their bail conditions, the officer said, bagging the note. Harassment. Vandalism. Witness intimidation. I looked at the shattered glass on my living room floor. Go get them, I said. This wasn't just a divorce anymore. It was a war. And I was done playing defense. You would think getting arrested would stop Bernice. You would be wrong. Narcissists don't stop, they just change tactics. Even with the impending investigation, she was fighting like a cornered rat. Bernice made bail for the fraud charges, I don't know how, probably a predatory lender or a favor from some shady past connection, but she was out. And she went on the offensive. 2 weeks after the brick incident, I was served with papers. Not divorce papers, those were already moving. These were for grandparents' visitation rights. In Minnesota, grandparents can petition for visitation if they have an established relationship with the child and it's in the child's best interest. Bernice was claiming she was Hallie's primary caregiver while I worked, and that I was alienating Hallie from her loving family. It was a joke. Bernice had never babysat Hallie for more than an hour without complaining. But she knew this would drag me into court. She knew it would cost me money I didn't have. It was spite, pure and simple. The hearing was set for a month later. I walked into family court holding Mr. Henderson's arm. I looked tired. I was tired. Working full-time, single-parenting, and fighting a legal war on 2 fronts was draining. Bernice was there, looking surprisingly put together. She wore a modest suit, a cross necklace, and had clearly practiced looking like a sweet, victimized grandmother. Candace wasn't there, she was back in jail for the brick incident, bail revoked. But Bernice was still standing. Her lawyer, a greasy man who looked like he chased ambulances for sport, started his opening statement. Your Honor, Mrs. Miller is a hard-working woman, but she is bitter. She is using her daughter as a pawn to punish her husband's family. My client, Bernice, simply wants to bake cookies with her granddaughter. Is that a crime? She fears for the child's safety with a mother who is so vindictive. The judge, a stern woman with glasses on the end of her nose, looked at me. Mrs. Miller? Mr. Henderson stood up. Your Honor, we object to the visitation on the grounds that the petitioner is currently under indictment for felony fraud against the child's mother. Furthermore, we have evidence that the petitioner considers the child, and I quote, a burden. Objection. Bernice's lawyer shouted. Hearsay. It's not hearsay if it's on video, Henderson said. And we have a witness. A witness? Bernice looked around, confused. The doors opened. Walking in was Aunt Joyce. Bernice's sister. The one who had tipped me off. Bernice's face went white. What is she doing here? Joyce took the stand. She looked at her sister with pity and disgust. Joyce, Mr. Henderson asked. Can you tell the court about Bernice's relationship with her granddaughter? She hates children, Joyce said bluntly. She calls Hallie the brat or the baggage. She told me explicitly, I only tolerate the kid because Mallory has the money. Once we get the money, Trent can dump the kid on her. Liar! Bernice screamed, standing up. You're just jealous because Dad left me everything. Dad didn't leave you everything, Bernice, Joyce said calmly. You forged the will. Just like you forged Mallory's mortgage. Order! The judge banged her gavel. We also have the video, Henderson said. He handed a thumb drive to the bailiff. We played the clip. It was from the hidden camera I had installed in the living room 3 months ago. On the screen, Bernice was sitting on my sofa, drinking my wine. Hallie ran up to her holding a drawing. Look, Grandma. A flower. Bernice pushed Hallie away, not gently. Get off me, you sticky little brat. You're ruining my silk blouse. Go upstairs. Go! Hallie ran away crying. Bernice turned to Trent, who was off camera. God, she's annoying. You need to send her to boarding school when we get the money. She's just baggage, Trent. Focus on the assets. The courtroom was silent. The judge stared at the screen, then at Bernice. Bernice's sweet grandma mask had slipped. She looked furious. Ms. Miller, the judge said, her voice icy. Did you just refer to your grandchild as baggage? I was stressed. Bernice stammered. Mallory provoked me. The video is edited. It's deep fake. AI. It clearly is not, the judge said. Petition denied with prejudice. And Ms. Miller? I am issuing a permanent restraining order. If you approach this child again, if you call CPS again, if you drive past their house again, you will be held in contempt and jailed immediately. Get out of my courtroom. I walked out of the courthouse feeling 10 pounds lighter. Bernice was screaming at her lawyer in the hallway, blaming him for everything. She saw me and started to lunge, but a bailiff stepped in between us. This isn't over, she screamed. You'll never be free of us. I already am, I said. But you're not free. The RICO trial starts next month. That afternoon, I picked Hallie up early. We went for ice cream. Not the cheap stuff. The good stuff. Mommy, are we poor now? Hallie asked, licking her chocolate cone. She had heard me on the phone with the bank earlier about the mortgage payments. No, sweetie, I said. We have less money. But we are not poor. We have each other. And we have the truth. That makes us the richest people in the world. She didn't really understand, but she smiled and got chocolate on her nose. I wiped it off, and I swore to myself that no one would ever treat her like baggage again. 6 months later. The wheels of justice grind slow, but they grind exceeding fine. I sat in the back of the courtroom. I wasn't required to be there, but I needed to see it. I needed the closure. I wore my red dress again, the one I wore to the dinner. It was my victory flag. Trent stood before the judge. He looked smaller. The expensive suits were gone, replaced by a cheap button-down that didn't fit right. He had lost weight. His hair was thinning. Stress and lack of access to his expensive stylist had taken their toll. He had taken a plea deal. In exchange for testifying against Bernice and Candace, he pleaded guilty to 1 count of fraud and 1 count of identity theft. Mr. Miller, the judge said. Your actions were despicable. You preyed on your wife, the mother of your child. You betrayed the fundamental trust of marriage. Trent looked down at his shoes. I'm sorry, he mumbled. I'm really sorry. Then, he tried. He actually tried to read a letter he had written. Your Honor, I was manipulated. I was weak. My mother, she has a powerful personality. I just wanted to make her proud. The judge cut him off. You are 38 years old, Mr. Miller. Stop blaming your mother for your greed. I sentence you to 3 years of probation, 500 hours of community service, and restitution in the amount of $215,000 to be paid to the victim. You are to have no contact with the victim except through legal counsel regarding custody matters. And let me be clear, any violation results in immediate incarceration. He got off light on jail time because he flipped. But the financial ruin was absolute. He was a felon now. He couldn't get a real estate license. He couldn't work in finance. He was unhireable. Then came Candace. She got probation too, and a criminal record that ensured she'd never work in fashion or retail again. Theft charges are a career killer. She cried the whole time, her mascara running, looking at me with pure hatred. And finally, Bernice. Because she was the mastermind, and because she had a prior record from decades ago that Joyce had helped uncover, and because she had violated bail by orchestrating the brick attack, the judge wasn't lenient. Bernice Miller, you orchestrated a conspiracy to defraud your own daughter-in-law. You manipulated your children into committing crimes. You filed false reports with CPS. You are a danger to the financial and emotional well-being of society. I want to read my victim impact statement, I said, standing up. The judge nodded. Proceed, Mrs. Miller. I walked to the podium. I didn't look at Bernice. I looked at the judge. Your Honor, they called me a doormat. They thought I was soft. They took my kindness and weaponized it. They stole my daughter's future to buy handbags and crypto. But the money isn't what hurts. It's the betrayal. It's the fact that I invited them to my table and they tried to eat me alive. I am asking for the maximum sentence. Not for revenge, but for safety. My daughter deserves to grow up without a predator in her life. Bernice stood up. She's lying. She's the predator. She stole my son. Sit down. The bailiff forced her back into the chair. Bernice Miller, the judge said. I sentence you to 4 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. Bernice screamed. It was a raw, primal sound of disbelief. It echoed off the mahogany walls. As the bailiff cuffed her, she looked back at the gallery. She looked for someone to save her. But there was no one. Trent wouldn't look at her. Candace was looking at the floor. Our eyes met. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just looked at her with absolute indifference. She was nothing to me now. Just a bad memory. A cautionary tale. As they led her away, kicking and screaming about her rights, the heavy oak doors closed with a finality that resonated in my bones. I walked out to the parking lot. It was autumn now. The leaves were turning gold and red, crisp in the Minnesota air. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Robert Vance. Robert, just heard the verdict. Justice is served. Also, I thought you should know. Elena and I are finalized. She moved back in with her parents in Wisconsin. Thank you, Mallory. You saved me from living a lie. I texted back, you're welcome. Good luck, Robert. I got into my own car, paid for with my own money. I started the engine. The radio was playing a song about starting over. I wasn't starting over. I was continuing. But this time, I was driving the car. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. I had spent the weekend painting. The beige walls that Trent loved, its neutral for resale value, Mallory, were gone. The living room was now a soft, warm sage green. Hallie's room was a riot of lavender and sunshine yellow. It was symbolic, yes, but it was also necessary. I needed to reclaim the space. Every time I looked at a beige wall, I saw Trent standing there lying to me. Every time I looked at the old carpet, I saw Candace spilling red wine and blaming me. I ripped the carpet up myself. Underneath, there was beautiful hardwood that they had insisted on covering up. It was like me, hidden, covered up, but strong underneath. Hallie was doing better, but the trauma lingered. She had nightmares sometimes. She would wake up crying, asking if the bad lady, Bernice, was coming to take her. No, baby, I would soothe her, rocking her back to sleep. The bad lady is in a timeout. A very long timeout. She can never hurt you again. We saw a child therapist once a week. Dr. Evans was kind. She told me Hallie was resilient, but she needed consistency. She needed to know I wasn't going anywhere. "Mommy, can we get a dog?" she asked me one Saturday, holding a paintbrush dripping with purple paint. I paused. Trent hated dogs. He said they were messy and smelled bad. He said they were a waste of money. "Yes," I said, smiling. "Yes, we can. A big, goofy one." "Yay!" She cheered, accidentally flinging purple paint onto the exposed hardwood floor. I laughed. I actually laughed. "It's okay. We'll wipe it up. It's just a floor. Floors are meant to be lived on." That evening, after Hallie went to sleep, I sat on my new sage green sofa with a glass of wine. I opened my laptop. Not to check bank accounts, I checked those once a week now, not obsessively every hour, but to look at job listings. My company had been supportive during the trial, but the ghost of the corporate espionage hung over me. Even though I was the victim, some people looked at me as a liability. I could feel the whispers in the break room. "That's the woman whose husband stole the insulin data." I needed a fresh start. I saw a listing for a director of pharmacy operations at a hospital system in St. Paul. More money. More responsibility. A completely new environment. I updated my resume. Mallory Miller. Skills: crisis management, forensic auditing, negotiation. I chuckled. I had certainly learned those skills the hard way this year. I wasn't just a pharmacist anymore. I was a survivor. I submitted the application. Then, I did something I hadn't done in 10 years. I opened a dating app. Just to look. Just to see what was out there. I swiped through a few faces. Then I deleted the app. Not yet. I wasn't ready. And honestly, I didn't need a man to complete my life. I had Hallie. I had my house. I had my peace. Peace is expensive. It cost me $200,000 and a broken heart. But sitting there in the quiet house, listening to the wind in the trees, I realized it was worth every penny. 2 weeks later, I got the job. The interview was intense, but when they asked me, "How do you handle pressure?" I looked them in the eye and said, "I took down a 3-person fraud ring while raising a 5-year-old and working full-time. I think I can handle hospital logistics." They hired me on the spot. 6 months later. I was walking out of the grocery store when I saw him. It was Trent. He was wearing a uniform, a green vest with a cleaning company logo on the back. He was pushing a cart full of mops toward a beat-up van. He looked old. He looked tired. The arrogance was gone, scrubbed away by community service and the reality of minimum wage. He saw me. He froze. For a moment, neither of us moved. The parking lot slush soaked into my boots, but I didn't feel the cold. I saw his eyes flick to my car, a newer model SUV I had leased after getting the director job. I saw him look at my coat, a nice wool trench. Mallory, he said. His voice was raspy. Trent. You look good, he said. There was a hunger in his eyes, but it wasn't sexual. It was the hunger of a drowning man looking at a life raft. He took a step toward me. I miss you, he tried. I miss Hallie. I miss the house. You miss the money, Trent, I said, not unkindly. Just factually. You miss the ease. You miss the doormat. You miss having someone fix everything for you. He flinched. I'm changing. I'm working hard. This job, it's honest work. I'm trying to pay the restitution. I'm glad to hear that, I said. Keep working. You have a lot to pay back. Hallie's college fund isn't going to replenish itself. Can I see her? Can I see Hallie? Talk to Mr. Henderson, I said. Supervised visits only. Once you pass the drug tests and pay the child support arrears. You're 3 months behind, Trent. I can't afford it, he exploded, just for a second, the old entitlement flaring up. They garnish my wages. I have nothing left. Then get a second job, I said calmly. That's what I did when we were married. Remember? I worked weekends so you could play consultant. He slumped. Mallory, please. I'm her father. I'm lonely. Then get a dog, I said. Oh wait, you hate dogs. I unlocked my car and got in. I watched him in the rearview mirror as I drove away. He stood there in the parking lot, surrounded by dirty snow, holding a mop handle like it was a scepter of his ruined kingdom. I didn't feel happy seeing him like that. I didn't feel sad. I felt nothing. He was just a stranger I used to know. A ghost. I drove to the park where Hallie was playing. Tanya was there, watching her for me while I shopped. Saw the ex, I told Tanya as I sat on the bench. Yeah? Did you run him over? Tanya joked, sipping her latte. No. I just left him there. Good, Tanya handed me a coffee. He's the past. Look at the future. She pointed to the playground. Hallie was hanging upside down from the monkey bars, laughing hysterically. A golden retriever puppy, our new dog, Buster, was jumping around beneath her, barking happily. Hallie looked free. She looked happy. Yeah, I said, taking a sip of coffee. The future looks pretty good. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was an email from the prison notification system. Status update, inmate Bernice Miller. Disciplinary infraction. Phone privileges revoked for 30 days. Apparently, Bernice had tried to scam another inmate out of their commissary money. Some people never change. But I had. I put the phone away. I walked over to the monkey bars. Mommy! Watch this! Hallie yelled. I'm watching, baby. I called back. I'm always watching. Tonight, I am writing this from my balcony. The snow has melted completely, and the first buds of spring are on the lilac bush. The air smells like rain and new beginnings. It's been a year since I found those texts. A year since I was a doormat. People ask me if I regret staying so long. If I feel stupid for losing 10 years to a man who never loved me, to a family that viewed me as a resource to be mined. Sometimes, yes. I have moments where I want to go back in time and shake the 26-year-old Mallory. I want to tell her that love shouldn't hurt. That partnership isn't about diminishing yourself so the other person can feel big. I want to tell her to run when Bernice makes that first snide comment about her dress. But then I look at Hallie. And I look at the woman in the mirror. If I hadn't gone through the fire, I wouldn't be forged in steel. I like this new Mallory. She has scars, yes. She's a bit cynical. She checks bank statements religiously. She doesn't trust easily. She keeps her circle small. But she is strong. She survived a wolf pack in sheep's clothing. She outsmarted a conspiracy. She protected her cub. She looked a vice president in the eye and demanded justice. Bernice is in prison, knitting potholders and probably telling everyone who will listen that she's a victim of a cruel daughter-in-law. She's rotting in a cell of her own making. Candace is working at a call center, living in a studio apartment, blocked on all my social media, and banned from every luxury store in the mall. Trent is scrubbing floors, learning the value of $1 for the first time in his life. And me? I just signed the paperwork to refinance the mortgage on my mom's house. I'm paying it off, month by month. It's hard, but every payment is a reminder that I am capable. I recovered the property. I saved the legacy. They thought I was weak because I was kind. They thought I was silent because I had nothing to say. They forgot that the most dangerous thing in the world is a woman who has run out of patience. A woman who has stopped caring about being nice and started caring about being free. I finish my wine and stand up. Inside, Hallie calls out. Mommy! Buster stole my sock again. I smile. I'm coming, baby. I walk inside and close the sliding glass door, locking it securely behind me. The lock clicks with a satisfying sound. It's the sound of safety. The sound of boundaries. If you are reading this, and you feel like a doormat, if you feel like someone is wiping their feet on your soul, please listen to me. Don't wait for them to change. They won't. Don't wait for them to apologize. They can't. Don't wait for permission to save yourself. You don't need it. Stand up. Shake off the dirt. And close the door. Because on the other side of that door is a life that belongs only to you. And it is beautiful. The end. As the story closes, we are reminded of the quiet power that lies within resilience. Mallory's journey is not just one of overcoming betrayal, it is a testament to the strength of self-worth and the courage to reclaim what is rightfully hers. Her story teaches us that kindness is not weakness, and silence does not mean surrender. It is often in the darkest moments that we discover our true selves, and through Mallory, we see that even when life tries to break us, we can rise stronger and wiser. This is a powerful lesson in valuing oneself, setting boundaries, and refusing to let others define our worth. Mallory's decision to stand up for her dignity and protect her daughter's future wasn't just an act of survival, it was an act of love, both for herself and for those who depend on her. It's a reminder that sometimes, walking away from the people who hurt us is the most courageous step we can take toward freedom and happiness. What do you think about Mallory's transformation? Have you ever had to fight for your own self-worth? Share your thoughts or simply comment good if this story inspired you. Let's celebrate the strength we all hold within.